Welcome to another Planet video from UNM.nu. I wanted to follow up from yesterday's video discussing the U.S. national debt. I knew in my head it was $1 trillion every 100 days, and I found that other thing that said $1 trillion every 150 days. I think I was getting confused because it was talking about specifically $1 paper bills being printed, so that's totally different. So I wanted to clarify that in this video because I think the US national debt is very important. Obviously, I live in America, so that's huge, but even for the whole global community, so much relies on America. So here, this actually does confirm it that the US national debt has been increasing rapidly in recent months. And so now about $1 trillion is added every 100 days. So about over $3 trillion per year. Over $3 trillion per year is added to the national debt. That's crazy. Nearly $34.4 trillion right now. Um, Part of the reasons for this is based on wars, Afghanistan and Iraq. The COVID pandemic didn't help anything. Tax cuts, stimulus programs just increased government spending, decreased tax revenue. So widespread unemployment is a decrease in tax revenue. Very fascinating phenomenon because based on job reports, I thought that unemployment is at a really low level right now, and yet so many people are not working, whether because they're living at home, relying on a spouse. Certain industries are definitely suffering. So, like restaurants, hospitality, people don't want to work in those industries anymore and finding other preferable career choices. So, but that's a whole nother topic. Aging population, the baby boomers are getting older. So that's going to increase Social Security, Medicare. They won't be working and they'll be taking out of the system. Rising healthcare costs, interest rates are through the roof, 7, 8%, whatever they are these days. So that's interest that the government's paying out. I like, in quotes, I don't really like this, but I like what this says in terms of understanding the importance of the national debt. The CBO projects that the debt held by the public as a share of GDP will reach 115% in about 9 years, 180% by the year 2053. I mean, when you're talking about like double the debt than what's being generated annually through GDP, that's scary. Um, by the year 2034, so we're just talking about 10 years from now, all tax revenue will be needed to fund mandatory programs and debt payments, leaving the federal government dependent on debt. That scares the heck out of me. Like the way things are supposed to work, in my opinion, is that tax revenue is used to fund programs. If you can't afford those programs, you need to be very selective and choose only the programs you need. If you're having to take out debt just to support necessary programs, that's not sustainable in the long term. So, I mean, if this isn't proof enough that you need to switch the majority of your investments from the US dollar to other things, specifically Bitcoin, I'm going to recommend that, or Planet, since Planet is so tied to Bitcoin right now. This should be proof enough. And I wanted to see the actual debt. Maybe it's not rate. Maybe it should just be US debt by taxpayer. I think this was above $200,000 per person. Here we go. This is just per person in the United States. So, ignoring taxpayers, we're talking about non-resident or non-citizens, people who don't have to pay tax, kids, disabled. I don't know, whoever it may be. We're just looking at all people in America essentially owe over $100,000 in terms of the debt, and we know a lot of people in America are not making 100 or not going to have like $100,000 worth of savings during any point in their lifetime. Is the number I keep hearing is if you ask the average American if they could come up with $1,000 in an emergency, 60% of them could not do that. Here we're talking about the average every American owing $100,000 just to get us out of debt. That's never going to happen. I wish I could find that $200,000 number that I saw earlier today. This is all AI generated, I guess. So maybe if I do this enough, it'll come up. US debt by paying taxpayer. I really want to find that number to share it because it blew me away. If I just type in 200K, US debt. Can't, I know it said taxpayer. I don't know why it's not coming up. And I'm not going to spend too much time doing this, but maybe here. This is getting closer. So this is $263,000 for every household in the United States, which that's a good number to look at because that takes into account who's working, who's not working in the household, whether that's spouses, kids, whatever. So every household owes more than $250,000 to get us out of debt. And what about this one? This is probably just going to show the actual clock. That's for every person. Why is it so high? You can read this on your own, but I kind of described it that, essentially the US government can't stop from spending. And it makes perfect sense from a political perspective is if you're a senator, a congressperson, anybody involved with government, President Biden, the executive branch, you want to spend more money than you have available through taxpayer money because you want to be able to tout the accomplishments you've made so you can stay in office, especially senators where there is no term limit. You can essentially make a career out of being a senator for 30, 40 years. And so how are you going to stay in office? Well, you get to say, hey, these are the things I've accomplished. Look at all this spending on military, on domestic defense, on, infrastructure improvements, whatever it may be. And you wouldn't have been able to do that solely based on taxpayer money. So unless, and again, I'm not unique to this, I've heard this 1,000 times, if not more, that how do you keep politicians from just spending unlimited money and putting us into debt we cannot recover from? You simply make a rule that says if you can't balance the budget, you're not allowed to be reelected. So that would get senators, Congress, House of Representatives to change things very quickly. I mean, if they were told you cannot run for a second term, for a third term, whatever, for a next term, unless you balance the budget, there would be a huge change in behavior. But of course, that's never going to happen. No politician is going to let that kind of rule pass. So that's a shame. And here again, this just talks about the stuff we've talked about before. Every day, spending $2.4 billion on interest, which again, if this interest was paid to US citizens, and I'm sure US citizens hold a lot of this debt, but I mean, from what I know from hearsay in the past is that China, maybe Saudi Arabia, a lot of foreign countries hold our debt. So this is money that's essentially just leaving the country. That's not good. So I'm probably not going to be able to find that $200,000 number, but I found it by household at least. By paying taxpayer. I wish this AI would just generate it again. I don't know how I was able to get it earlier. But you can take my word for it. It said over $200,000 per taxpayer. So again, how does this relate to Planet? Long story short, US is printing money that it can't stop putting us more and more into debt. That is not sustainable. What is sustainable is Bitcoin and Planet Finance. The APYs I'm getting are sustainable. They are real. I've experienced it since 2021. If you're new to Planet, there isn't a better time to get into Planet than right now. Aqua and Gamma, the native tokens, are dirt cheap. Bitcoin is on its track toward $300,000 plus. I mean, first we got to get to $100,000. First we got to get to 80,000, back to 70,000. Who am I kidding? But Bitcoin, I firmly believe, is going to hit $300,000 by the end of next year. Planet should follow suit. If you think Planet is actually going to rebound as a project, it should way outperform Bitcoin. And things like the US dollar getting devaluated by just endless printing and unsustainability there should convince you, even if you're not into crypto, put your money into gold, put it into non-US denominated items, MicroStrategy if you're more into the stock market. So those are my thoughts, just my opinion. do your own research, not financial advice. But wanted to cover that. I'm going to do one more video tonight, which again will come out about a week from now, covering something that Kev talked about in the Telegram group. So that's a little spoiler alert or prelude to tomorrow's video. God bless, my friends. Until tomorrow, take care.